Welcome to the Varietal Show. My name is Rory, and if you've never been here before, this is Varietal Literature's YouTube channel, a place for people that like writing, really, and reading and stories, narrative in general. It's a group of writers from Vancouver, primarily me, but occasionally my writer friends come on, and on Tuesdays, which is not tonight, we do folklore and fairy tales, and on Thursday nights we do sort of write-alongs with a prompt structure, and lately we've been doing a lot of solo tabletop RPGs, and that is indeed what we're doing tonight, but it is effectively an exercise in writing. So if you enjoy writing or want to throw your own ideas into the live chat or use the prompts in your own way on your own writing at home, you can even share it in the chat if you so desire. This is the stream for you. But if you came on board for the folklore and fairy tales, and that's about the only thing you really want from the channel, that'll be back on Tuesday. That's not tonight. You're welcome to check this out. Of course, I appreciate it, but I don't want you to be misled. With that said, if you are like, will this guy stop talking and get to writing at any point in the next few minutes, and you're not watching it live, down in the description below, there will be little timestamps, and you can click on them and they can jump you ahead to whatever part of the stream is probably most interesting to you, including just the results if you want. Yeah, but beyond that, this is how we spend Thursday night, a little write-along. And it's about almost time for me to tell you what we're going to do tonight, but before I do, I'm going to say hello to the live chat. And again, if you want to join the live chat, come on in, say hello. I see Big Drew's there. Been a while, Big Drew. Good to see you again. It says, good evening, literary tycoons. Tycoon, I wish. Nah, actually I don't. Tycoons could burn in hell. GS says, good evening. And Big Drew says, do we have an official fan group name? Well, to do that, I would need fans. And we're working on that. All right. If you are watching out there, don't feel obligated to come into the chat, but absolutely, you should come into the chat if it interests you. You drop suggestions, because this is sort of an interactive experience, even though it is a solo tabletop RPG. Anyhow, let's get on and with the explanation of the game, and a reminder, if you do not want the explanation and you're not watching it live, down in the description below there will be a timestamp that can skip you right over it. This is the part of the show we call litgames. Litgames stands for literature games, and it's sort of there's a lot of names they go by, like expressive games, lyric games, solo tabletop RPGs, solo journaling games. It's like 10,000 names. It's one thing that we millennials are great at, giving everything a category and a name that didn't need to be that many. But anyways, the point of it is it's a prompt structure, and from those prompts we're going to try and write the beginning of a structure, a story, sometimes a whole story we get done, though less so lately. And sometimes it's just developing a character, a few vignettes, whatever it is. I enjoy writing, so if you like writing too, I think you'll like this. And in particular, tonight, we are playing a game called 1888 Amenti. I may be saying that wrong. That is an Egyptian word, an ancient Egyptian word. And I'm sure this is far too tiny for anyone to read. So I will sort of talk you through the structure and the premise of the environment, a little bit about where the dice come into play. This game is played entirely with what's called a D4 dice, or more the cool kids call a caltrop, because it hurts like hell to step on. That's all you need for this game, is a way to write and a caltrop, or a D4. And if you want to buy it yourself, I think it's like $1 or something on I'll put a link in a pinned comment when the video is no longer live. But it's a mini tabletop RPG, which means it's only really this one page, which is part of why the text is so small. So I'm going to zoom way in, so you guys have a hope of seeing it. And then I'll read you sort of its premise, and I'll explain to you how it goes. But what I'll say overall is it's 3 days hiking in a desert, Unexpectedly, there's a couple of ways that we got that way, but let's say like a plane crash. And as we do, we're hiking towards the only structure we see. And during that hike, we have visions. And what those visions are, we have to interpret, but the things we have to interpret, we get by rolling the d4 dice. So effectively, we'll sort of describe a vision, our own interpretation of the vision, and how we resolve the vision, because they are sort of framed as tests from a mysterious god. Okay, so during your journey into the Sahara, wild winds called for sandstorms. The clouds obscured the sun, and you lost your way. Now stranded and alone, you must start walking with the little you have saved. Your destination is a figure lost in the endless horizon. With your clothes covered in sweat and sand, thirsty and exhausted, still battered. Do you remember how you got to this point? Now, chat, right away, you guys have an option here. I can roll this, or you in chat can vote. If it's a tie, I'll roll it. But there are 4 options for how we came to be stranded in the desert. And chat, just tell me which number you want. Number 1, this was a business travel occasion. Like you were on a plane or something for business and you got lost. Number 2, this was a military mission that was critical for victory and you somehow got separated and lost. Number 3, this was going to be a unique adventure. Keep in mind, this is 1888. This is not modern day. And number 4, you were running from the law. So I'll take some votes on that. I know there's a little bit of a lag, so I'll let people choose, and I'll carry on with the explanation. What we carry with us, just what we have should we need an item for part of the story, is a canteen with water, though it will not last long, a compass, which is useless if you don't know what you're looking for. Poets, right? A blanket torn in the accident, a sharp piece of metal, short for a knife. Now, I don't know what they're trying to say here. I get the impression that English isn't their first language reading through this whole document. I think they're saying that the piece of metal wouldn't really function as a knife because it's a little short. And pen and paper enough for a journal. Okay. Oh, everyone wants running from the law. Okay. I didn't expect that. I really didn't. Okay. I'm going to put that in here, and then I'll continue explaining it. Put some thought in, folks. What were we doing in 1888 around the Sahara Desert that got us running from the law? Okay, carrying on. I'll zoom out just a little bit. You walk the unmerciful desert under the judgment of the sun and the moon and the eyes of Horus. And you start to get to what is at the core of this, which is this is mostly structured around a kind of loose understanding of Egyptian mythology. You will endure 3 days without water. On each of those days you will receive a vision. When a vision manifests, you must interpret it and seek to understand the trial that was presented. Your experiences will become teachings, your decisions will be evaluated. So you can see this is very sort of abstract and whatnot. But for example, on each day we will roll on the visions table. And I'll just look at the first example here. At one moment, you find an animal climbing the desolation. Now you'll notice that animal and desolation are bolded. And the reason is because there is a chart for what animal it is. We'll roll the dice again. And there is a chart for what the desolation is, whether it's a carcass or a stone ruin. And we'll roll for that. So basically you roll to figure out the structure of your vision, and then you roll twice more to figure out the details of your vision. And once we have that, we can just get to writing. Based on, we'll sort of write it out. And then at the end, we roll to see if we failed the trial or passed the trial. And it's completely random. But then we just basically decide why we failed or succeeded. So don't worry about that, because the odds that we'll get through too much is always low. But basically, we're going to have visions in the desert. It doesn't really impose a tone on us, although a little bit of mystery is good. I won't go full silly with this, but I don't mind some humor. And it offers us this lovely little map of our journey, which I think gives some visual examples here. There's where we, crashed, started, and then there's the first day, the second day, and the third day, and then whatever it is that's in the distance, which I do know what it is. The book never directly states it, but there are hints throughout what it's referencing. Which, if you remind me, I'll tell you in the end, but I'm not going to do it now. But yeah, that's the structure. I don't think I need to dwell on it. As far as what we're doing for writing, I don't think it's too confusing, but, people are welcome to ask questions if they want. Okay, so, folks, it's 1888. We ran into the Sahara Desert rather than get caught by the law. What were we running from? What was our crime? Smuggling artifacts? Oh, that's a good one. GS says smuggling artifacts. Was that even illegal in 1888? I feel like that was a job. Being an Englishman who comes and just takes artifacts was like a job. I guess, yeah. I'll work with what that is. My own commentary aside. Grave robbing scumbag. Who tried to get some gold from an old tomb near Cairo. Was chased off by the guards and lost them in the dunes as much as he himself was lost. Okay. Which means it's time. Well, okay, let's do a little introduction with the character first, and then we will get to our first vision. So, that's sort of notes for me, but and as per usual, names and descriptions of characters and stuff like that, you can drop whatever you want in the chat. I'll try to work in whatever I can, frankly. Let's have a drink of fresh, refreshing silver canned cola. Now without sugar. It sure is in a brandless silver can. I'm not advertising for anybody. Alright. It was when the gearbox finally stripped its last gear that I realized how far I had driven into the Sahara has the dunes, right? Now I feel like an idiot. Sahara is definitely the dune one. What's the one that's not dunes? It's a desert, but it's not dunes. I mix it up. There's one in the center of Africa, sort of. That's a very large desert. Is that the Sahara? Because that one isn't particularly dune heavy. Egypt isn't near the Sahara, is it? Yes, it is. This is where we all learn that the thing I'm not good at is geography. I'm going to do that thing that I try to avoid to do, which is look stuff up. Kalahari! Oh! Well, I'm way off. Well, this says the Sahara Desert's near them. The western desert of Egypt is an area of the Sahara that lies west of the Nile Up to the Libyan border. Okay, I'm not crazy. I think Kalahari's also there. Okay. Sahara. How far I'd driven into the... Big Drew says in all caps, Sahara encompasses the majority of northern Africa, including most of Egypt. Okay, I don't... Oh, is it Kalahari the one that I'm thinking of that isn't sandy? Maybe that's it. I'd very much like to see the Sahara one day. Realized how far I'd driven into the Sahara's eye dunes. The sun was billowing its heat off the sands and turning my partner into a foul, rotting thing at twice the speed. This is a terrible sentence. I turned to my partner, limp, slumped against the dash, and patted his sweat and blood soaked shoulder. I'm sorry, you old villain, I said. This wasn't your gig. The punishing western sun had dried up all he had drained from his wounds. Big Drew says, I'm using caps for the contributions that aren't a part of my story. Yeah, I got it. Don't worry. I don't think you're yelling at me. I do like the idea that they're, like, I'm sort of, I don't know, in front of a crowd, delivering this, whatever it is you would call this. And then there's some guy in the back who's like, Kalahari! I know that's not what you're doing, but the image of that is funny to me. The punishing western sun had dried, the floor is sticky. Maybe I don't need to say that. People get the rest. Having one of those days, it's hard to get going. You know why? Because we're foster caring a cat at the moment who clearly has some PTSD. I don't say that as a joke. And so sometimes he can be very needy and sweet, and sometimes he can be very loud and walk around incredibly anxious, and he tends to do that in the middle of the night. So I haven't had as much sleep as I normally do when I come on here, so we'll see how that affects things. Maybe I'll write the best thing I've ever written. Maybe it'll be barely sensible nonsense. The punishing western sun had dried the floor sticky under his motionless feet. The soldiers had broken off pursuit, though. The winds tossed away our tracks. I couldn't tell you how far out I was or where I should travel. I had been weaving in and out of blinding sandstorms, for hours. I pulled my lucky bones from the old truck. I suspect if it's 1888, obviously there wouldn't be vehicles. So I guess this is actually probably closer to like 1908 or something like that. Probably more like World War I. And looked up to find the sun. To my surprise, thin clouds obscured its location, but not its heat. I couldn't waypoint. I couldn't wayfind with the sun. What terrible luck. There were never clouds. This is from the book, by the way. It says that the sun is clouded over. There were never clouds out in the western sands. I squinted towards the horizon. An endless expanse that felt like a prison. I saw no buildings, towers, trees, anything. I saw nothing but a single solitary figure that stood in silhouette. Maybe, I guess this is the, I'm gonna have to use Imperial because of the era. Maybe a mile off. I tried to wave, but they continued walking until they slipped. Gia says, is the figure a hallucination? It's the premise of the game. So, well, I guess we'll have to figure it out. So in the first part of it says, the clouds obscured the sun and you lost your way. Now stranded alone, you must start walking with the little you have saved. Your destination is a figure lost in the endless horizon. They slip behind. Now, you could say that's a structure. By the way, figure doesn't necessarily mean a person. I just think it's more interesting if it's a person. So that's the way I'm interpreting it. But they continued walking until they slipped behind. the ridge of a dune. I had no other. I had no other marker to follow. So I followed that. Day 1. Now we roll the dice. Here comes the prompts. So again, we're going to roll for our vision. I really hate D4s as a dice. They barely roll. Okay, we rolled a 1. So at one moment you find an animal climbing the desolation. So that gives us like a structured sentence, which I'll put in here. Then we're going to fill it in. First of all, we're going to figure out what animal we see. It's not a varietal show if I don't kick the light. Okay, that's a 2, so we see a scorpion. Tough but ruthless. Climbing, and then the desolation is a strange term for this, but it is still accurate. Gia says, I hope it's a gerbil. Well, we may get to another vision. Maybe it will be a gerbil. 4, a dry river. Okay. So now it's on us, chat, to interpret this vision, and I'll read the language that they give us here. You must tell/write how you will intervene in the vision, explaining why. Think about what it represents, not what you see. Your actions are symbolic. In other words, kind of do whatever you want. So let me just set a little bit of tone about us sort of starting to lose our minds. Or whatever it is you want to say this is, starting to see the uncanny. You find a scorpion, tough but ruthless, climbing a dry river. Okay. The evening... How did I get... That's weird. My cap locks button is inverted now. Okay. What? Nope, now it's working again. Okay. The evening, yesterday, I left the truck and followed the strange nomad as they peaked above the tops of dunes. Eventually, I grew exhausted and began and drank the rest of my water before lying in the sand to sleep. The next day, I was sure the figure would be long gone. But I caught sight of them again. Keeping a steady pace. Away from me. Keeping a steady pace away from them. Next day I was sure the figure would be long gone, but I caught sight of them again, keeping a steady pace away from me. I should have paced my water. The gold we had robbed was starting to feel like rocks without purpose. A heavy burden on a tired body in an inhospitable land. I still hang on to them. And under weak legs, they toppled. The sack of treasure toppled me. When I landed, I saw the oil slick body of a black scorpion. The size of a hound, routing itself. Routing? Is that the word? Routing itself along the riverbed, along a dry riverbed, long desiccated. Riverbed. GS says the ever elusive figure, tall figure, maybe too tall, seemed to be pulling him forward and never got any closer. Yeah, exactly. I'm not sure what I saw was physical, but it seemed very real. I felt compelled to intervene. I shouted at it, "Dig deeper! The water is deeper. Then we can all drink." The terrifying black scorpion stopped and looked towards me. What do you think, chat? What do you think the scorpion should do? I'm going to roll to see if we succeed. Or fail. Maybe that'll help inform it. We passed the trial. The gods send a divine sign in the form of a blessing. You find food, you find water, you find shade. The stars show your way. Your wounds no longer bleed. Well... I'll give Chad a chance to intervene. I do have an idea of how this vision can conclude, though. GS says it charged me. Okay. It charged down on me And I was so tired under the weight of my stolen gold that I could do little but scream into the booming sands, into the booming dunes. Also, have you guys ever heard that? It's very cool when you're out in sand dunes. I've not personally heard it in person. I've seen it in TV and stuff. No. Well, actually, I thought there were no sand dunes in Canada, but apparently Saskatchewan has massive sand dunes, which is super cool. But anyways, when strong wind goes across certain types of sand dunes, you get this. I could do little but scream into the booming dunes. It grabbed me and violently plunged me into the hard earth. I felt my teeth break into my throat. And suddenly, I was drowning when I startled from my vision. I found myself kneeling in a pool of clean water. My fingers ragged from digging for it. I drank it with my hands until the pocket was dry. I then continued my march towards the figure, taller than it should be, that drew me onwards. I left the sack of heavy gold by the pond, now drained. Oh, hey, we have enough time to do another one. Day 2. I mean, if we do well enough on this one, I might even be able to finish the game. Day 2 means we have to roll another vision. That's a 4. So at one moment, you notice 2 animals traveling together. Okay, so that's our structure. 2 animals, which means we have to roll on the animal twice. 3 is the snake. And 4 is the gerbil. Oh, I love this. Because they're traveling together, but they're 2 things that would be sort of enemies. So let me get that prompt down. Okay, I'm gonna get another drink of water. Again, if you have any recommendations of how you want to integrate some stuff or your ideas, you go right ahead and let me know. Okay. At one moment, you notice a gerbil, nimble but weak, traveling with a snake. Okay. The steps were easier without the weight of my greed, but still not easy. The water carried me through to evening yesterday, but now I find my mouth parched and my stomach growling. GS says gerbils hop like kangaroos. That is true. They do that, don't they? I used to have gerbils. They are funny little creatures. They're a creature that in North America, it's hard to imagine them being wild. Like, it's the same thing with guinea pigs, right? Like, it's hard to imagine guinea pigs being wild. And apparently, they would basically be extinct if they weren't pets at this point. Because I think they used to live in areas where it was just higher than anything else went. Still, the tall figure, robed in sky blue, drew me on further into the sands. I had begun with greedy eyes. I'd begun searching with greedy eyes. For food of any sort. The soft steps of sand ate all my energy. A spider, a bird, a grub. I would eat anything. Then I saw the snake. It was above me on a dune and stared at me with intelligent eyes. But all I could think was how to kill and eat that great black asp. It slithered out of sight, and I chased on behind in a burst of wasted energy. When I scrambled over the peak, oh, I like that idea, Jess. I'll work it in. I saw the asp was far below riding some sliding sands and approaching a small white rodent reared up on its back feet. It was a gerbil, and it was surely slithering in for a meal of it, to make a meal of it. Yet, instead, the gerbil turned, and I heard it whisper, what I could not say, for it was some language I've never heard. It pointed to me, and the asp nodded in response before slipping into the sands and out of my sight. The gerbil followed its tunnel to safety from me. It was a vision indeed, but I was uncertain what to do. I was compelled to act, and so let's roll and see if we succeed. No. Also, chat, if you want to give some advice on how we intervene, let me know. I'll give Chad a chance to catch up with that. Let me know if what you think he should do about this vision. And if you have no ideas, that's okay. I have ideas too. And so I tumbled down the steep incline of ever-running sand. Searching for where the gerbil and snake had gone. I whispered to the dune where I figured they hid and said, if I forget my hunger, is there a way I can help you in return for such help? Would the asp, quicker than me, catch up to the wandering man I follow, or the wandering figure I follow? So we succeed again. They did not respond. But the wind cut a harsh gale through the dunes, so fierce I thought it may cause me deafness. And when my sight returned, the path was made through the dunes. Flat as an English road. Roman road? Roman road. At the far end, I saw the figure, and now it waited. I limped onward for it. Okay, where are we at? We're just about out of time. I am curious what the last vision is. Maybe we can do a little ending here, because we're very close. So... it's a 3, so at one moment you arrive at the desolation and an animal watches you. So, desolation first. So 2, stone ruins, perfect. This is fitting with my idea here. An animal watches you. Let's see what animal. We've gotten almost every animal. The only one we haven't gotten is the jackal. Oh, but it's the scorpion again. I like that. There's some symmetry to that. Through the night, I followed the winding, flat path left by the gust, as if it were made by a giant asp. The moon returned from the clouds and lit my way. My mouth was as dry as salt. My whole body trembled with starvation, dehydration, and the wicked ways of an endless sun. The figure stayed put, though, and when the path through the sands culminated, I saw it was no man, woman, or figure of a folk of any type. It was a gate of obsidian and blue marble that stood higher than a pyramid. Before upon the frame of the gate was the oil slick scorpion I had seen in the riverbed. I wasn't sure what to say, whether it was a friend, an enemy, or something, some spirit of a morality I could never grasp. Let's see if I succeed this vision. I do not. I called for it and said, "You tried to kill me, yet I live." And have persevered to freedom. Yeah, I didn't think that was. I pointed towards the gate. Then something nipped at my toe. A scorpion of a normal sort. And burning flooded up my leg. I collapsed into the agony, and the great black scorpion reached its claw and pushed open the grand marble gate. Beyond, I saw Amenti, the path to the other side. To the underworld, which is what it is. But now we check if we have enough trials passed to win. We won 2 and lost 1. So you wake up in your world having been rescued with a renewed conviction. Describe what you seek to teach people. I don't think I can get that much in, but... for some reason, I felt terror I cannot describe. I had lived for one more day, my whole life, but never much more. And so I broke into tears as the scorpion venom overtook me. It was a passing group of nomads who found me. They blessed me with water and food of a strange sort than I was accustomed. We didn't speak the same language. But I made it clear how grateful I was. I had bound and severed my foot, for otherwise I would have surely died of the infected bite. But now I seek to repay the debts that most wouldn't know I owe. All right. So, because I promised I would say it before I go and do the reading here, let me just very quickly... Amenti was thought to be where the sun set and where the entrance to the underworld was located. Although later the term began to associate itself with graveyards and tombs as well. Okay, if you're coming to this part of the show, then you just want to know how the story went. We called this one Traveling the Last Road. In 1888 Amenti playthrough, Amenti is this very small, little, but effective solo tabletop RPG. You can check the pinned comment below if you want to go and get it yourself. It involves us being stranded in the desert and having visions, potentially from a god, and interpreting those visions and intervening on them, and then them being sort of tests of our character. Our character, we decided, was running from the law. That's how they got lost in the desert. A sort of a grave-robbing scumbag who tried to get some gold from an old tomb near Cairo, was chased off by guards and lost them in the dunes, as much as he himself was lost. Okay. So I'm going to read an introduction, and then we'll go through the 3 visions, and then the conclusion. We did actually make it all the way to the end of the story. It was when the gearbox finally stripped its last gear that I realized how far I had driven into the Sahara's high dunes. I turned to my partner, slumped against the dash, and patted his sweat and blood-soaked shoulder. "I'm sorry, old villain," I said. "This wasn't your gig." The punishing western sun had dried the floor sticky under his motionless feet. The soldiers had broken off pursuit long ago, though. and the winds tossed away our tracks, so they couldn't find me, but I couldn't find my way. I couldn't tell how far out I was or where I should travel. I'd been weaving in and out of blinder cliffs of sand for hours. I pulled my lucky bones from the old truck and looked up to find the sun, and to my surprise, it was obscured by thin clouds that let through its heat but not its location, so I couldn't wayfind with the sun. It was terrible luck. There were never clouds out in the western sands. I squinted towards the horizon, an endless expanse that felt like a prison. I saw no buildings, towers, trees, anything. I saw nothing but a single solitary figure that stood in silhouette, maybe a mile off. I waved, but they continued walking until they slipped behind the ridge of a dune. I had no other marker to follow, so I followed that. Day 1. Yesterday I left the truck and followed the strange nomad as they peaked above the tops of dunes. Eventually I grew exhausted and drank the rest of my water before lying in the sand to sleep. The next day I was sure the figure would be long gone, but I caught sight of them again, keeping a steady pace away from me. I should have paced my water, though. The gold we had robbed was starting to feel like rocks without purpose, a heavy burden on my tired body in an inhospitable land. Still, I hung on to them, and under weak legs, that sack of treasure was exactly what toppled me. And when I landed, after rolling down a dune, I saw the oil-slick body of a black scorpion. It was the size of a hound, routing itself along a desiccated riverbed. I'm not sure what I saw was physical, but it seemed very real. I felt compelled to intervene, so I shouted at it, "Dig deeper! The water's deeper! Then we can all drink!" And the terrifying black scorpion stopped and looked towards me. It charged down on me, and I was tired under the weight of my stolen gold. So tired under the weight of my stolen gold that I could do little but scream into the booming dunes. It grabbed me violently and plunged me into the hard earth. I felt my teeth break into my throat, and suddenly I was drowning. And when I startled from this vision, I found myself kneeling in a pool of clean water, my fingers ragged from digging for it. I drank it with my hands until the pocket was dry. I then continued my march towards the figure, taller than it should be, that drew me onwards. I left the sack of heavy gold by the pond, now drained. Day 2. The steps were easier without the weight of my greed, but still not easy. The water carried through to the evening yesterday, but now I find my mouth parched and my stomach growling. Still, that tall figure, robed in sky blue, drew me on further into the sands. I'd begun searching with greedy eyes for food of any sort. The soft steps of sand ate all my energy. A spider, a bird, a grub, I would eat anything. Then I saw the snake. It was above me on a dune and stared at me with intelligent eyes. But all I could think was how to kill and eat that great black asp. It slithered out of sight, and I chased on behind in a burst of wasted energy, and when I scrambled over the peak of the dune, I saw the asp was far below, riding some sliding sands and approaching a small white rodent reared up on its back feet. It was a gerbil, and it was surely slithering in to make a meal of it. Or so I thought. Because instead the gerbil turned, and I heard it whisper, what I could not say, for it was some language I've never heard. But it pointed at me, and the asp nodded in response, before slipping into the sands and out of my sight. The gerbil followed the asp's tunnel to safety. From me. It was a vision indeed, but I was uncertain what to do. I was compelled to act, and so I tumbled down the steep incline of ever-running sand, searching for where the gerbil and snake had gone. I whispered to the dune where I figured they hid and said, If I forget my hunger, is there a way I can help you? In return for such help, would the asp, quicker than me, catch up to the wandering figure I follow?" They did not respond, but the wind cut a harsh gale through the dunes in a storm, so fierce I thought it would cause me deafness. And when my sight returned, I saw that it had made a path through the dunes, flat as a Roman road, and winding like a snake. At the far end I saw the figure, robed in blue, and how it waited. I limped onward for it. Day 3. Through the night I followed that winding flat path left by the gust, as if it were made by a giant asp. The moon returned from the clouds and lit my way. My mouth was as dry as salt. My whole body trembled with starvation, dehydration, and the wicked ways of an endless sun. The wicked deeds, I should say. The figure stayed put, though, and when the path through the sands culminated, I saw the figure was no man, woman, or figure of a folk of any type. It was a gate of obsidian and blue marble that stood higher than a pyramid. Upon the frame of the gate was the oil-slick scorpion I'd seen in the riverbed. I wasn't sure what to say, whether it was a friend, an enemy, or some spirit of a morality I could never grasp. I called for it and said, "You tried to kill me, yet I live, and have persevered to freedom." I pointed towards the gate. Then something nipped at my toe, a scorpion of a normal sort, and burning flooded up my leg. I collapsed into the agony, and the great black scorpion reached its claw and pushed open the grand marble gate. Beyond I saw a Menti, the path to the other side, to the underworld. For some reason I felt terror that I cannot describe. You know what? I'm getting rid of for some reason. It's pretty obvious why. I had lived for one more day my whole life, but never much more, and so I broke into tears as the scorpion venom overtook me. It was a passing group of nomads who found me. They blessed me with water and food of a strange sort that I was not accustomed to. We didn't speak the same language, but I made it clear how grateful I was. They had bound and severed my foot, for otherwise I would have surely died of the infected bite. But now I seek to repay the debts that most wouldn't know I owe. And that was our playthrough of Amenti, 1888. But it's not our only story, because Big Drew wrote his own version of the story. Let me get a drink of water, and I will read Big Drew's. My name is Jebediah Olmsted, and I am the last learned man in my band of scoundrels. Most of us hail from Richmond, but we picked up a few tag-alongs along the way. Well, Richmond obviously isn't this accent, but I've committed now. Last night we made Kansas City and the spoils of their largest bank vault. Following our hasty departure, we found a few ladies to keep us company for the waning hours of the night. Pre-dawn, Barnabas awoke to the sound of horses trotting fervently in the distance. Our fire extinguished, we silently made our way into the night. Y'all know that was too damn close. Y'all know that was the damn sheriff, been tailing us since Raleigh, Barnabas shouted over a small rickety wagon as it bounced down a rather unforgiving trail. As dawn broke, the morning sun washed us in a blinding warm light. I could no longer see my breath, so I knew it was time to hide my face, scruffy though it may have been. As we happened upon a structure, I noticed a cross perched on top and asked Barnabas if he had any sins to declare. We may be outlaws, but we're not without our souls, after all. He said no and stood guard over my horse as I made my way inside. Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. It's been 4 days since my last confession. In that time I have shed the lifeblood of 6 men, illegally obtained approximately $20,000, and used a large sum of it to partake in drink, gamble, and taste the flesh of no less than 3 women. Father, I ask your forgiveness and a blessing on my life as I walk into my next chapter. When I heard no voice reply to my confession, I said a prayer and walked out. Barnabas was gone when I emerged. My horse was tied, and my saddle and bags were loaded down with treasures and ammo. I found Barnabas out back the chapel. He was laying near a grave marked Wrigley. These my folks, Jeb. Bartholomew, Trixie, my sister Mary, my brother Lucky. Lucky got typhoid. Mary was slayed by a vagrant who wanted her young flesh, and my folks died pursuing that wicked man. Oh, he got his, but fate was cruelest to me as I was left to wander alone. Now thank you, Jed. Without you, I'd have gone mad some time ago. You keep me safe, kept me company, took care of my needs with our jobs, and my soul at these chapels. I can't be an outlaw anymore, Jed. I leave you my horse, my weapons, my cut. All I ask is that you bury me and my family when I'm gone. With my family when I'm gone. And with that, Barnabas plunged his dagger into his stomach. Ooh, grim. I held his hand as I watched light and life leave his eyes. Here lies Barnabas, a good friend and a family man, and I scrawled on a fallon plank of the old church house. "Yeah," I called out as the sun dipped into the horizon, painting the clouds with pink, orange, and crimson. As I happened upon a spring, I shed my blood and sweat-soaked poncho and sank in. My peace and serenity was short-lived, however, as I heard the familiar clatter of a rattlesnake. Would this be my fate? Bitten and boiled in the earth's kettle? That was lovely. I like the vignette tone of it, Big Drew. I think you kind of shine with the country, that sort of Western style, that oh, what's the word for it? I think they call it neo-Western or something. It's sort of the non-optimistic recounting of Manifest Destiny and outlaw culture, because there was a period of time there in stories where they were sort of heroic and fighting off them Indians and whatever else, and then when you start getting into, I mean, I don't know exactly what the first one would be, but things like Clint Eastwood one from the 90s, Unforgiven and Tombstone, where it's sort of a revisit of what kind of man you actually have to be to do those sorts of things. I think it fits that kind of tone well, which is a great, a rich soil for stories. All right, well, this was a lovely creative night. It is 1.5 million degrees in this room. I don't know where it is for you guys. Thank you so much, Big Drew, for coming along and sharing your story. I hope you guys enjoyed our little wander through the Sahara. Again, if you want to try that game, I'll have it in a pinned comment below. It's quite cheap. It's quite beautiful. Big Drew says, the human side of the Old West. I actually really like the concept. Yeah, I like it because it is sort of like a lot of the stories that came out of that era were just basically government propaganda. And so it's really lovely to see people taking a more sincere look at it as to what actually the outcost of this kind of life is. Anyways, I see that my little foster cat is up, so he's about to make a ton of noise. Which, good timing. He knows when to make an appearance and when not. So for the rest of you, thank you so much for joining me and writing stories with me. If you enjoyed this, hey, you can show me by giving a like. I really appreciate that. If you really loved it, if you're like, this was great, there's a coffee link. You can buy me a coffee down below, but you don't have to do that. That's just a nice thing that some people choose to do. And as for me, well, I'm going to go turn my air conditioning on. As for you, well, you don't have to go home, but as you know, you can't stay here. Get out of my shop.